Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Anxious but Thriving. So today's episode, it honestly might be a little bit shorter because I actually did plan out this episode and I don't know. I'm feeling like I don't know. You know what? Maybe we'll make it a little bit longer than I thought I was going to make it. I didn't want a trauma dump, but I feel like for this episode we might, right? So let's just get into it a little bit and I'll let you guys know what this episode is going to be about. I was 20, sitting in the car with my best friend, laughing about how much I was just crying a few hours ago about a breakup. And she goes, "This screams daddy issues." And I laugh because in my head, daddy issues look like chasing after men who don't want you. But me, I was running from men the freaking second they showed me a red flag. But that's the thing though. Daddy issues don't always look the same. Some of us crave love from emotionally unavailable men. And others of us, me, flinch at the first sign of disappointment and run before we can be left. This episode is about how mine showed up and what it cost me. My dad wasn't just emotionally unavailable, he was physically gone, in and out of prison for most of my life. But somehow, even behind bars, he still expected me to show up, to answer his calls, to visit, to be the daughter he needed while he barely showed up as a father to my sister and I. When he was out, he didn't get any better. He'd promise to pick us up and just sometimes wouldn't. No explanation, no calls. But every time I did see him again, he handed me money. Like it was supposed to fix it, like money or like love could be bought. And I remember going to school like the following days and just giving that money out to my friends because that's how little I cared about it. Because I didn't want cash, I wanted consistency. And also, whenever my dad would be released from prison, it was like he had a whole another life set up. He had a new girlfriend, got somebody pregnant. It was like a big fiasco every time he was released. At some point, I started to feel like things would just be easier if he stood in prison. And I remember feeling really bad about that feeling, but I remember thinking about this because it was getting to the point where he was going to be released soon. And I didn't know when exactly that day was, but I knew it was coming. And I started to really contemplate like how my life would change or how it could change when he's released. Like, is he going to come looking for me? Is he going to want to see me? Like, am I going to run into him at the store? Like, like little things like that. And this is because the thing is, like, I wasn't completely without a father figure. My stepfather actually came into my life at a very young age. He was steady, reliable, present. He didn't just say things, he followed through. And because of him, I had something to compare my real dad to. I had a standard. I knew I knew deep down that the way my dad dipped in and out, the empty promises, the money for love routine wasn't normal. It wasn't love. So while I've got some daddy issues, I also had someone quietly showing me what a real man, what a real father looks like. And I think that's why I don't tolerate certain things. I think that's why I leave. And this is just going in to say that at a very young age, um I remember being passed the phone to speak to my dad in prison and not wanting to and simply being like, I don't really want to talk to him. There's nothing to talk about. I remember at a very young age just being in the know that this was not normal, that I was quite literally going out of my way to answer these calls, to visit him in jail. I was doing all of these things that he wouldn't even do if he was out of prison, right? Like it became a job for me. And who's a parent here? Like I started to feel like I'm the one putting in effort, but when you come home, is this effort even going to be reciprocated? And 9 times out of 10, it was not. Um, And I remember him like trying to blame my mom for the fact that I just didn't want to see him or speak to him anymore. And it's crazy because my mom actually would be like, "You should talk to your dad. You should visit your dad." And it's like, I don't really want to. It feels like a job. It feels like I feels like I shouldn't be the one doing this. You know, it feels like I'm going out of my way to do this or this does not. And it was also uncomfortable to visit a prison. Like you had to wear certain things because they were scared that, men were gonna look at women a certain way. Like we had to wear like really, really baggy clothes and like yeah, it was just like a process that I didn't want to do and I shouldn't have been doing at such a young age for a man that was barely showing up for me when he had when he had the means to do so, you know? So I feel like at a very young age, I kind of set like not a boundary, but like a standard to how I wanted to be treated, how I was gonna show up for people versus how they were showing up for me. Now I want to some way somehow like incorporate how I've noticed my daddy issues show up in my life. So with that, I'm going to talk about the two relationships that I talked about in the last episode, and we're just going to define them as 50-50 and what was the other one? 50-50 and provider, right? You guys know the situation. You guys know the stories behind both, and if you don't, go watch the last episode. I'm not going to repeat myself here. No teasers. Go watch the last episode. So I remember with the provider relationship, he would always ask me like, "What do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday?" And I'd tell him, and it would never be anything crazy. I'm not a designer girly. I don't really like expensive things like that. And every time he wouldn't follow through. I don't think I've ever gotten a gift from him. He always had an excuse. Either we were arguing or I had an attitude, but I still somehow showed up for him. I still got him what he wanted, still kept my promises even before we were officially together. I'm telling you, I threw this man a birthday party before he was even officially my boyfriend. The Lulu things. Ask me what I got for mine. But that was the pattern. He'd say, "I'm going to take you here," or "let's plan this," and nothing. Eventually, I started to mentally check out of this relationship for more reasons than this, but that's in the previous episode. I started to check out before I physically left because it felt too familiar. Like those empty promises, they sounded just like my dad's, and I wasn't gonna sit around waiting to be disappointed again. I learned not to. Looking back, like I realized I stayed in this relationship longer than I should have, not because I was afraid to be alone, but because I kept hoping he'd prove me wrong, that maybe this time he'd follow through. But eventually, I had to be honest with myself. I was holding on to potential, not reality. And deep down, I knew what it felt like to be disappointed over and over again. And I promised myself I wouldn't go through that again. Not with a man, not with my dad, not with anyone. That relationship was the turning point where I really started to learn to trust like my own exit. Once I started to check out mentally, the rest was just a countdown. Go watch the last episode. Um and then with my 50-50 relationship, it was a complete opposite relationship. This man showed up for me in ways that I didn't even know how to ask for. I honestly don't even know how to ask for now. He was always there. He helped me with projects. He hyped me up. He was supporting me. He was a true partner. He was literally my assistant for like all of my small businesses. He even met my dad and tried to help us build some kind of bond. So my dad was actually released. My dad's been released like so many times, right? But he always gets back in there within like a couple of months, right? He was released I want to say 2021, 2020, 2021, right? Or 20, yeah, 2020, I think. I remember like knowing he was going to be released soon and being so worried that like he was gonna come out, he's gonna be mad, or being so worried that like I was gonna just like run into him. And the weirdest thing is though he was released, and I think this says a lot. Honestly, he was released and did not tell me. I found out. I honestly think I found out from my cousin because my my dad and his brother are always constantly locked up. I think they've been locked up together like their whole entire life. And I remember, I think, finding out from her because I think she told me her dad was home, or I think my dad was home before her dad was home. And I remember just finding out from somebody else, just crazy, like that he wouldn't even reach out to me. And the craziest part is, he actually lived around the corner from me with my grandmother. And now I don't actually know if he told my grandmother not to tell me. I don't know what the reasoning was for me not finding out from either of them, but I just remember not finding out he was home through him. I found out from somebody else. And I remember telling my partner at the time that my dad was being released, and he was really encouraging onto, like, me giving him, I was gonna say a second chance, but in reality it'd be like the fucking 10th chance, and being like iffy about it but comfortable because I had him by my side. And we even planned like a weekend trip to like Atlantic City, and we did like little things like that. But he noticed it too. He noticed how inconsistent my dad was, how I had to brace myself for disappointment even as a grown woman. And even though that partner loved me loudly, a part of me struggled to like fully believe it at times. Like I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's the part of daddy issues people don't always talk about. The part where even the good love feels suspicious. I think that's I think that relationship taught me something like deeper. That is not just about leaving when things are bad, but making sure you stay and learning how to stay when things are good. Not second guessing it. Just putting your trust into things. How to trust somebody like who's consistent. That was that was hard for me. He was patient and present, and it felt foreign, like I was always waiting for the catch. But the fact that he saw my father for who he really was and still encouraged that growth, it really meant everything to me, honestly. I don't think I would have been able to try to work on that relationship if it wasn't for him. And he reminded me that I can be loved in a steady, reliable way, even though it like our relationship didn't work out long term. He gave me a glimpse of what like I truly deserve. Like I said in my last episode, I constantly like look towards this relationship in a way, and it definitely changed me. When I think about it though, it's the funniest thing. When I think about it, like these two relationships mirrored my father figures in my life, right? Like the first partner I talked about that was full of empty promises, that was my dad all over again. Full of promises, rarely following through. That same feeling of being let down, realizing like words do not mean anything without the actions. But the second partner I talked about, he reminded me of my stepdad. And I remember being in this relationship thinking, like, I really picked a man that reminds me of my stepdad. And, like, I was really proud of myself for that. He was consistent, he was steady, no grand gestures. He was just really present. And I think that's why I struggled at first with it, because a part of me had learned to like associate love with chaos in a way. But seeing that kind of love again as an adult reminded me that I know what real love looks like. I've been in it before, and I definitely deserve it. And the wild part is the first relationship that I talked about, the one full of broken promises and excuses. That one actually came after the one where I was shown real love, after the partner who showed up for me and reminded me of my stepdad. So when I found myself in a dynamic that mirrored my dad, I could not unsee the difference. I had already experienced what consistency felt like. I knew what it felt like to be prioritized without begging. That's why I mentally checked out of the relationship so fast. Once you had real love, once you had a taste of real love, you start spotting like the fake love very, very quickly, and you stop settling. At the end of the day, daddy issues don't all look the same. Some of us chase love that feels familiar even when it hurts, and some of us build walls so high that no one gets the chance to let us down twice. But no matter how it shows up, it all comes from the same place. The parts of us that didn't feel protected, prioritized, or loved the way that we needed. I learned a lot from the way I loved and from the way I leave, from the kind of love I watched growing up and the kind of love I know I deserve now. And if nothing else, I hope this reminds you to pay attention to your patterns, not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. That's where healing starts. Thanks for letting me share this piece of my story. And if this episode hits home for you, take a moment, breathe, and maybe write down where your own story begins. I promise you, it'll teach you something. I'm really sorry this episode is so short. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to trauma dump here. I don't think I'm ready to really trauma dump as far as my daddy issues, but I did want to make this episode because this is definitely something that's been on my mind a lot. Um because I do know that daddy issues plays a part in my life, and I feel like it plays a part in a lot of people's life. I feel like even if you do have a present dad, it still some way somehow shows up. Even like mommy issues, right? I feel like it was an important topic to touch on, even if right now I'm not ready to fully talk about everything regarding my dad. I did want to drop something, So next episode is gonna be about friendships. I'm actually gonna have on a couple guests, and I'm really excited for this. So I hope to see you guys next Tuesday. I'm really sorry this episode is so short, but yeah. Maybe I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Remember, just because you're anxious does not mean you are not thriving, and just because you're thriving does not mean you're not anxious. Bye.